Hello everyone. Welcome for about the fourth time if you've been with us from the start. Thank you for your patience. We know that it takes a little bit of time to get started on a Thursday morning. So we're just welcoming a few other participants to join us as well. My name is Maddie. My pronouns are she, her, and I work at Foundation House. And I'm joined by the wonderful Francine from River Nile School and Eva from River Nile School as well. We've also got a number of other colleagues from Foundation House, River Nile School and Refugee Education Australia across the space who you'll have an opportunity to interact with throughout today's meeting. We're really excited to be able to welcome you to this meeting today. The topic is transitions, supporting changes throughout the education journeys of our young people and families from refugee backgrounds. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, services, schools, students, as well as some opportunities to interact with each other and do some shared problem solving and examples of good practice. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, for me here in Brunswick at our Foundation House office, but we know that we're welcoming participants from across Victoria, so I encourage you to acknowledge the lands of the traditional custodians that you're on in the chat, and take a moment to really consider what it is to live, work and play on those lands. As we're coming into talking about transitions, we know that changes and transitions is not always an empowering experience for our young people from refugee backgrounds, as well as lots of other communities as well, and certainly our young people and families from First Nations backgrounds as well. So we want to be able to mindfully hold that historically transition has been quite disempowering at times, has led to significant dispossession and loss. So we really want to consider when we're reimagining and brainstorming ways for that to be a more empowering and supportive process and change for young people, how it can be not just young people from refugee backgrounds, but across the spectrum of the young people who are engaged with the services and the schools and the settings that we're all supporting. We really commit today to listening and learning and acting so that we can make transition processes more empowering and supportive, and so that young people can feel really seen and culturally safe throughout those changes in their lives. So we have, as I mentioned, a really jam-packed day or morning for you. We're really thrilled to be able to bring this topic to you. We have been listening to what you're sharing throughout meetings, as well as outside of meetings as well. Many of you have brought things up with us in consultations, in conversations, in other network settings, that changes in education experiences can often be a time when there's lots of instability for young people, and there's also a lot of learning that we can do as schools and services to be able to improve those experiences. So I'm going to run through a little bit of housekeeping with you. We're going to talk about a few updates on behalf of the REEN network. Then we're also going to hear from some wonderful speaker from Noble Park English Language School, who's such an expert in transitions. Time providing, we'll have a short break. Then we're going to have some young people talk to us about what changes are like for them and what's most supportive for them. We're going to have some breakout rooms for you to do some shared problem solving and networking with each other. And then we're going to finish up by hearing from the Refugee Minor Program about how they support transitions for young people who have arrived quite recently in Australia. So very briefly, hopefully you've had a chance to come to one of our refugee education and empowerment networks before, but I will just very briefly, hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Fran, but I would like to introduce the three different partners who collaborate in running this network, the first of which is the River Nile School. Fran, did you want to just very briefly mention who the River Nile School are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Maddie. So I may have met many people in the room. My name's Francine and I'm the engagement coordinator. And River Nile School is an independent, fee-free senior secondary school providing specialised support and education for young women from refugee backgrounds and refugee-like backgrounds, aged 15 to 24.
Thanks, Fran.
Thanks, Maddie.
We also partner with Refugee Education Australia. I'm unsure if Sally from REEN has been able to join us this morning. Sally, are you on the line? Otherwise, I can very briefly mention something about REEN. Okay, lovely. So REEN is a national not-for-profit organisation that engage in a whole range of different advocacy work to really move forward the experiences of young people from refugee backgrounds, both in a schooling setting, but also in higher education settings as well. So they do an incredible amount of research and consultation with the sector and engaging with government services and the broader environment as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, my name's Maddie from Foundation House. I'm in our education and early years team, and we have a whole range of different services that we provide for schools free of charge across Victoria. So we'll pop a link in the chat and you can get in touch if you'd like to find out more about those, as well as a broader range of mental health and wellbeing supports that we offer here at Foundation House as well. A couple of little housekeeping things that I should say before I move on. We are recording this meeting, so you will have an opportunity to rewatch parts of it afterwards if you'd like, or for anyone who might not be able to be here, you can share it with them. We do have the chat and Q&A function enabled, so feel free to let us know if you have particular questions that come up for you throughout the meeting or any comments. Depending on how we're going with time, we may not be able to be responsive to all of them in this meeting, but we'll do our best to follow up with you afterwards. We send a really comprehensive email with lots of information and resources afterwards, so we'll try as much as possible to respond to anything that comes up. We'll be sharing the slides with you afterwards as well, so hopefully that's a bit reassuring. You don't necessarily need to take photos of each slide. You can sit back and enjoy and listen and
look
learn.
at you.
Oh, I think someone's on loud. I'll just change that. There we go. And then also, just as I mentioned before, just to flag that we do have quite a full meeting schedule this morning. So we will be quite strict with timing. Apologies in advance, both to our speakers as well as to all of the other participants, that will be sort of moving things along quite quickly because we don't want to take away from other activities and speakers who we have later in the meeting as well. All right. So in terms of network updates, I'm really excited to be able to let you know that we're launching our online platform for the Victorian Refugee Education and Empowerment Network. This is something that you all requested as members. You were loving these meetings, but wanted to find ways to continue to learn and engage with each other in between these termly meetings. So we have put together an online website. We've got a link and a QR code on the screen as well as in the chat. We do have a simple password to access the website. That's because this is the place where we're holding your shared contact details if you've consented to be able to provide those. So we want to make it as accessible as possible, but also a little bit protected too. We really encourage you to go and have a look at what's on the website so far. It's quite minimal at the moment, but we'll be adding more. Hopefully after this meeting, you'll see some extra things come up. And you're also welcome to add things yourself. There's an opportunity to pop in resources or comment on other things that are already on the website itself. I also want to mention a couple of advocacy and research things that are happening at the moment. Just very briefly, we know that this network is an opportunity for us to come together and both celebrate successes, but also identify particular challenges and gaps and how we can work together to address some of those. So the first sort of opportunity I want to mention is the Victorian State Disability and Autism Plan consultation, which happened earlier this year. Foundation House's Education and Early Years team provided a submission, and really grateful to some of the members of this very network who shared their feedback about what they're experiencing in terms of supports for young people from refugee backgrounds who have disabilities and how we can make sure that we're being as inclusive and empowering as possible. So we were really, really pleased to be able to send a really strong submission. We have popped into the chat a list of the recommendations that we provided in that submission. If you're interested in seeing the full submission, then feel free to get in contact with me, and we can hopefully share that with you as well. But we've just provided an extract of it for you to see some of the overarching messages that we shared. I also wanted to mention, and some of you might have already seen, that the Multicultural Youth Advocacy Network, MyAN, have recently released a racism in schools policy paper, which is really impactful and important to read. It compiles lots of existing research about what young people are experiencing in schools, and the responsibility that we have to be there for them and to redesign schools to be a more empowering place for them. And it also proposes the development of a national anti-racism framework for Australian schools, and lays out some ways that us as stakeholders across the education sector can really add our weight and add our voices to MyAN's calls for that. Is someone else screen sharing? Hopefully you can all still see what I'm seeing. Fran, can you see what I'm seeing?
So Maddie, I think your screen share might have gone off. So I've just jumped in and popped mine up for the
Thank you.
No
Thank
worries.
you. Sorry, Fran.
Oh, good.
And the other, there's a couple of other little research opportunities that I wanted to mention to you. Our friends at Refugee Education Australia have been sharing some opportunities with us. So the first of which is a flyer on the screen from some research that David Partridge is undertaking. He's looking at bilingual educators and plurilingualism in schools, and he's currently recruiting participants, EALD teachers in Australia, and bilingual teaching assistants, so we can really platform the importance of plurilingual approaches to learning in the classroom. So encourage you to follow the link in the chat if you're interested in getting involved in that research. And the other area of research that I don't have a flyer up there is by someone called Tamima Rahman. She's been doing some incredible research on education policy to address the needs of students when they're transitioning from English language schools or intensive English centres, as the title is called in New South Wales, and then moving into mainstream settings. So she recently presented in a Refugee Education Australia seminar with a bit of an overview of what she's finding so far, and you can have a look and listen to her if you're interested in that further. So to keep moving though, I'd like to stop talking myself and hand it over to someone who has much more experience on the ground with transitions than I do. We're really thrilled to be able to welcome some speakers from Noble Park English Language School. I should say a speaker from Noble Park English Language School. So Danielle Whiteman is one of the transition coordinators at Napels. She worked really closely with Sue Asamoudis on this presentation, who is unfortunately not able to be here today. In designing today's meeting, we thought, who knows the most about transitions? Who can we really learn from? Who do we want to figure out what's going well? Where are some areas for improvement? And immediately we thought, well, what's happening for English language schools? They're supporting young people as they're arriving in Australia, as they're settling into their first education environment here, and then as they're moving into another education or employment setting after that. We were so grateful that Danielle and Sue have been willing to share with us today. So I really want to thank Danielle for joining us and pass over to you, Danielle. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. We can indeed.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that amazing welcome, Maddie. That was very nice of you. Yeah, we're missing Sue today. She's unable to join us. So I'll be, presenting on my own. I'll be flying solo, if you like. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat. Maddie, are you sharing the slides for the presentation? Is that?
I think Fran is at the moment. Can you see them, Danielle, in front of you?
I think it's having a little bit of trouble loading, Maddie. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I just stop sharing and see.
I'll try to do it again. Sorry.
All right, awesome. No, that's all right. I'll stop sharing. Sorry, Danielle.
All right, no problem. Well, I'll start anyway. Do you mind if I just get started?
Please, can you see the slides now, Danielle?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Maddie.
Perfect. No worries.
Okay, so as Maddie said, transition is, a big part of refugee student settlement into Australia. They have their first, transition into the country, if you like. And then we transition them into the English language school for their education, their first educational experience in Australia, which for some students, it's their very first chance of coming to school. So it's a huge, 6 to 12 months that they have with us when they first come to our school. So, and then my job and Sue's job is to then transition them out of the school into mainstream education. So I'll have the next slide. Thank you. So we operate, Nepal's Noble Park English Language School operates across, actually, I think it's 5 campuses now. We started a new campus this year. So that should be updated to 5, everybody. Sorry about that. But we have campuses in Noble Park, the Casey area. Cranbourne is our new campus. And those 3 campuses cater for primary and secondary students. And then we have 2 smaller campuses, one in Springvale and one in the Stonington Glen Ira area, and they cater solely for primary students. We also have provide outreach program across the Southeast metropolitan region for primary and secondary schools. And that involves going out to mainstream schools and assessing students who are newly arrived in the country who are unable to come to the language school. We do an assessment with them, and then we make recommendations as to whether or not they should attend an English language school or be provided with EAL help in their school that they're attending. In 2025, we had over 900 students enrolled at our school and approximately 160 staff members. So just to give you some background about our school, the students at our school speak over 60 different languages. The largest 6 language groups are Dari, Hazaragi, Mandarin, Malay, Khmer, and Vietnamese. But obviously that's just, the tip of the iceberg. We have, like I said, over 60. So it's a huge multicultural environment across all our campuses. In 2025, we had 1,066 students who exited to over 343 educational destinations. These mostly were primary and secondary schools. However, some of them did include Catholic, independent, private schools, special schools, TAFE, and some students return overseas, some students go interstate. So you can see from those numbers that we deal with a wide variety of people, schools, students, staff across many different workplaces. Thank you. Just a little bit about our enrolment and eligibility. So when new arrival families with students who don't speak English come to Australia, they need to enrol within 6 months of their arrival at an English language school. That's just the criteria. There are exceptions to that, of course, but generally speaking, most of our students are just fresh off the plane, if you like, and they've been in Australia for less than 6 months. Refugee students are entitled to stay for up to 4 terms of intention to get their intensive English language program over the 4 terms. And other migrants and temporary visa students generally have 2 terms of English language help. We have students who transition into the language school. They come at any time. So we have a constant enrolment. And then, of course, that also means we have constant exits from the language school. So at the end of every term, we have students who will then transition after their time. So those numbers vary, but they happen across all 4 terms throughout the year. The Department of Education provides part funding for English language schools to employ transition coordinators. And this is for transition support for students who are at risk, and in particular students from a refugee background. So that's my role, and also Sue, who's not here today. We are in charge of doing the transition for the refugee and refugee-like students. We also have a couple of other staff members at other campuses who also do that role. So the transition process, it happens, we just thought we would cover what actually happens for our transition process over one term. So first of all, we need to look at the proposed student exit dates. So this is determined according to their visa type or previous schooling. And then what we do is we look at their, once we've determined who's actually ready to leave for that term, we look at their visa code, and then we move on to their personal details, so where they live, and we have a look at their address, and then we're using the Find My School website. We determine like what would be the best school that they need to transition to. So we gather lots of information. So we do that first of all. We send notices home. We check their personal details, try and find out if everything is still the same as when they first started, that they're living in the same address. And then we move on to gathering some information about the students, so their wellbeing, their learning, any year level recommendations, any information that might be really pertinent to making their transition to mainstream school as successful as possible. And then once we have all that information, we then negotiate enrolment appointments and attend enrolments with the refugee families and at-risk students at the school. And we move on to, in the final weeks, emailing any crucial information like transition reports or speech reports or individual education learning plans, and any particular wellbeing needs that need to be passed on to the school. We do that in the final weeks of each term. So basically, this is the process over a whole term. And as you can imagine, with, in some terms we might have 200 students transitioning. So that can be a lot of negotiating with many different schools, many different families, many different staff members across, a wide range of schools. Thanks, Maddie, for for doing the slides. So moving on to challenges and barriers. It's new arrival families, particularly those with little experience of a formal education system. They need time to become familiar with the complexities of the Victorian education system. They're often very not made aware of what actually needs to happen, how they should be going about enrolling students, what are the requirements. And so our job is really to step in and support that family and be their spokesperson, if you like, and to really help them throughout that process. Because as you can imagine, the first barrier would be the language barrier. So our parents usually have very little English. So we step in as their spokesperson and assist with the help of getting them into schools. So that might involve negotiating appropriate pathways for senior secondary students who've had interrupted schooling. And, these students have a lot of family pressure and personal aspirations to do really well, to go into VCE, to be part of a school environment that want, to fulfill their dreams, if you like. And this can create challenges for these students trying to get into mainstream schools, because you can, as you can imagine, not having a solid background of education in their first language, it's very difficult to come to Australia and then have 12 months of school and then expected to be successful at doing mainstream VCE. So there are lots of misconceptions about educational expectations, and there's limited knowledge of the prerequisites required for certain courses. Just some of the few barriers and challenges that we face. The next one, we move on to the next slide, is housing. Housing plays a critical role in the health and well-being of individuals, and the availability of appropriate housing underpins good health and social, educational and economic participation, as I'm sure you're aware. Many refugee families move into a new house at the start of their time with us. And then often in the process of their first year in Australia, they might change house due to many different reasons. Usually their very first year in Australia is very transient. So when we come to transition them, they often are in the process of moving house and will not have the same address that we originally had for them. And so they might be requesting different schools, different areas, different suburbs. And so that's part of one of the challenges, is working out actually where they're living and finding the appropriate school for them according, being in the closest school in their area. Thanks, Maddie. There's in just the policy context with school zones. In 2023, the Victorian school zones were tightened, and we had a Find My School website, which you're able to type in your address and determine which is the appropriate school that's closest to your home. And this is what we use to guide us to find the most appropriate school for our students. It does prevent challenges because schools now, especially schools that are overcrowded and are at capacity with their enrolments, require a 100-point proof of address. And these are usually strictly enforced by many different schools. So refugee families who are in temporary accommodation or have recently moved often struggle to meet the requirements of the 100-point proof of address. It's just one of the many, challenges we face. Secondary schools seem to be most affected with this due to the enrolment pressures and demand on their numbers. So that's one of our challenges, is to actually present with the families and try and encourage schools to enrol them, even if they don't have can't provide the 100 points proof of address. I'm not sure if you're all aware of what the 100-point proof of address is, but it basically it involves having documents that have a certain number of points. That can be, they need a lease agreement or a rental, proof that they have purchased a house in a certain area. They need to have Centrelink documents with their name and address on it, a driver's license, utility bills like electricity, gas or water bills, or telephone, internet bills, home, building, contents insurance. Everything must have their name and address, and they all add up to a certain number of points. And you can imagine this is really challenging for families who have just moved house and haven't yet had a chance to, to sign up for utilities or change their driver's license. So just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that we're covering with schools. So the department actually does allow flexibility for refugees and recently arrived migrants. But in practice, the schools will often say to us, we have our own school policies and we have to follow those policies. So they don't allow for that flexibility where we might come to advocate on behalf of the families and say, look, they've just changed house. They don't have 100 points yet. Can you still enroll them because they are living here? But often, I would say more often than not, schools are not willing to do that. And so it leads to a feeling of families feeling unwelcome and, to be honest, unsupported. at their local school. So it's not a very nice kind of way to transition into a new school environment when they're being told, no, you can't come here because you don't have the 100 points of ID. I think it would be great if schools could offer a little bit more flexibility and just have a little bit more understanding about the backgrounds of refugees and recently arrived migrants and the difficulties they have in actually supplying those documents. So that's one of our major challenges, I guess, that we are constantly sort of working at and working with families to families and schools to support both, because we like to stay on the the right side. We want to do the right thing, but often we're sort of sandwiched in the middle between the families and the school. Thank you. So the impact this has on refugee families can be that the enrolment processes sometimes can take weeks from when we initially reach out to the school explaining that we have this student to then actually finalising the enrolment process. So some students actually need to wait until the following term to begin school. And we know that this is not a great transition. We think that all the enrolment details need to be finalised in the previous term so that students can begin school on day one of the term that they're starting, so that there's no additional sort of stress placed on them. They're not missing classes. They're not missing out on those important first few days of every term. Those welcomings and the beginnings of every term is really important for these students more than ever to be part of that. So it does have a big impact if the enrolment process is held up due to housing difficulties and addresses, etc., and documents. So our job as transition coordinators is to frequently advocate on behalf of these families and to really push for these students to be enrolled, as soon as possible and on time. There are families that do go ahead and attempt to enrol independently without support from us. They might not. On the other hand, also we have families who sometimes don't like to take our advice and insist on going to a particular school outside of their zone. And even with repeated attempts to tell them that that's not really possible, they still might attempt to enrol at a particular school that they've heard is really good or that they want their child to go to. And that in itself is really, there's many challenges with that. And often they are doing this without interpreters, so it can be really confusing for them, and it takes them a while to understand that that's actually not how it works. And so it's just another challenge that we're faced with our students that we transition. Moving on to the next slide. There are also challenges with our senior students. So we've entitled this one Challenges in Year 10 VPC, VCE and VCE VM. I'm assuming everybody knows what they all are. So the Victorian Pathway Certificate and the Victorian Certificate of Education, and then of course VCE Vocational Major. So you can imagine we have constant students transitioning from our school. It can be at the end of term 2, can be at the end of term 3. So that would, if you're in year 10 and you're transitioning from us and going into a secondary school at the end of term 3, meaning you're starting in year 10 in term 4, can be really challenging. So we often like to place students. We have to look at the whole, we look at the whole student, we look at their background, we look at their age, we look at their previous educational experience, and we like to place them, if that was the case, say for a year 10 student going in for one term at year 10, we think ahead and go, will this student be able to cope after one term in year 10 to then move into year 11? And often that's not the case. So we might advocate for them to go into year 9 for one term. So then they get a full year in year 10 and then can progress into VCE from there. However, this can't always happen, as you can imagine, because we have age-appropriate education in Victoria, and students need to be placed with their peers and in appropriate classes. So it's not always possible. So in reality, students might be placed, they might face significant curriculum challenges. They might be placed in subjects that don't match their interests, their aptitude, or prior learning. And it can be really difficult. So if they're starting sort of at the start of the year, they have the most chance of success. But if it's a mid-year enrolment, it could be, the challenges could be about limited subject choice, and also, like I just mentioned, about their age. So there's many different things that we need to consider when looking at the senior students going into secondary schools. University aspiring EAL students are rarely offered mainstream VCE pathways. It can be really challenging for them. We know from their limited English that it's going to be very difficult for them after 12 months to then move into a VCE pathway. But we do look at the whole picture and the whole student and try and make the best choice that we can. Thanks, Maddie. So as I've just talked about, the older students are usually around 17 to 18 years. They cannot enter year 11 mid-year. And then if we can, we might attempt to place them into year 10. But if this is not going to happen due to their age, then we need to recommend TAFE. And then they can do, we recommend that they do further English at TAFE, and then they progress towards doing VCE in a TAFE environment. So some students that do go into placed in year 10, that many are directed towards VPC or VCE VM pathways. And schools often cite a desire to set students up for success. However, in reality, it's often quite different once students are in those mainstream secondary schools. Thanks, Maddie. We had 60 students who were enrolled in TAFE last year, and that was compared with approximately 10 annually in previous years. So we're seeing large numbers of students come into the country who are in that older age group, 16, 17, 18, and it is providing challenges for us. There's a growing reliance on TAFE reflects barriers to mainstream secondary pathways. And then we have the local TAFE providers that are facing increasing demand and then capacity constraints. So there's all sorts. It's not just as simple as, they're too old for high school, we'll send them to TAFE. We then have barriers getting them also registered and enrolled and ready to go at TAFE. So I'll have the next slide. I'm conscious of the time.
I promised I'd give you time warnings, but I didn't want to interrupt you, Danielle, but you have got about 5 minutes. You're doing amazing,
okay, no
really
worries.
Getting through it. Thank you.
That's okay. So just we'll quickly cover the emerging TAFE barriers. There's long waiting periods for the AMET program. That's due to increased migration and settlement in the Greater Dandenong area. Older adolescents face disrupted transitions and delayed educational engagement. We did have a CGEA course, which was the Certificate of General Education for Adults. In last year, we enrolled quite a few people in this program. It seemed to be a really good pathway for us, but then they changed the criteria on us and then made it that you had to be 18 years old to actually enroll in the CGEA course. This was a really good pathway for us, for students that was 17, and they were actually really enjoying that course that we could get them into. And then they moved the goalposts, if you like, and that was no longer an option for many of our 17-year-old students. So they then had to go back to doing the English program, further English for them at TAFE. And a lot of them don't like to do that because that's where their parents are at, and there's all sorts of barriers and challenges facing them. And so I'm moving on to the next one. You can imagine there's lots of student anxiety around transition. Students have already had that anxiety when they have left their home country and often have fled a traumatic home environment in their country of origin. Then I think we do a fantastic job of settling them into Australia, setting them into school, setting them up with some English skills, providing them with lots of information on how to be successful. And then the anxiety starts to increase when they know their transition is coming up again and that they have to leave the language school. So we work with students, we work with classes, we work with teachers in trying to reduce the student anxiety. We visit classes, we organise extra visits at mainstream schools for students who are anxious. We have meetings with UCAN2 facilitators. We have parent and carer meetings. We have meetings with caseworkers, with DFFH caseworkers. We also have guest speakers who come out. We might have guest speakers from TAFE so that they can talk about, how successful their programs are and that's really beneficial pathway for them. And we have a wellbeing mental health practitioner that also works with our students. And the other thing we do is we often invite, we try to, it's challenging in itself, but we try and invite ex-students back to come and talk about their successes about moving into mainstream, and that can ease anxiety for our current students. Thanks, Maddie.
Danielle, we have a couple of minutes to go. You've still got a few slides. Is there one that you want to land on? Would you like to finish with a particular slide?
So much to cover.
I know. Yeah. Sorry to cut you short.
No, that's okay. I'll just finish up by saying we do follow up with students. We follow up primary students and secondary students after they have been at their mainstream educational destination or school for over a term. We go and follow up. And there are many success stories. So it's not all doom and gloom. It is very challenging. But I think the main point to consider is that our students need a really supportive transition. And then once they actually land in their new school, it's really important that they're supported with learning further English. So they need as much support as schools can provide, because 12 months in the country and learning a language from scratch is really not enough. It takes 5 to 7 years, and in some cases up to 10 years to learn a language to the same level as a student who has been born here. So there are many challenges in that regard. So I think, these students need time, and often for the older students, time's not on their side. So that's why we just try and provide. We want them to have the best transition. We want them to transition successfully. We want them to have hope for the future. We want them to fulfill their dreams. And we try and fit in with that as much as possible that we can, with the constraints that we're surrounded by. So their age being the major one, and English, their English barriers. So I think, it's there. Maddie is going to share, I think, with everybody our supportive transition checklist. And I think if schools just had a little bit more understanding, sympathy, empathy, just consideration for these students, and many schools do, but I think that's probably the main point, that just take a little bit more care with the refugees and the students who need that little bit extra, support in moving forward with their time in Australia. We want them to be successful and to transition really well. I think we try and do our best, and it's just, it's not an easy job, but I think I can leave you with the discussion points and considerations that might be great for everyone to have a chat about, and just see where they sit and where they see the transitions from your side of town. But thanks, everyone. Sorry, I hope I didn't ramble too long.
Danielle, thank you so very much. You didn't ramble at all, and we really appreciate your direct messaging and how many incredible takeaway tips and strategies you've provided for stakeholders across the education sector. It's been invaluable. Thank you so much for the opportunity to learn from you. I've popped the prompts up on the screen, and we're going to have a chance to discuss these in more detail later in the session. So I really encourage those who are putting comments in the chat about how wonderful Danielle's presentation was, or follow-up questions, hold on to those. We'll have an opportunity to unpack them more in some breakout rooms a little bit later. And apologies for having to rush you, Danielle, but thank you so very much for being willing to join, and particularly at the last minute being willing to present by yourself as well. We know that it must have been very onerous to go through all of those slides solo, but it wasn't obvious at all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maddie. I really appreciate it. And there's a lot to cover, so it's hard to sort of condense it into 20 minutes. But anyway, thanks everyone. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to spend just a couple of minutes on break while we get ready for our student panel. We're very excited to be able to welcome some of the students from Noble Park English Language School. And I think some of a student from River Nile School, whether or not they've been able to join us this morning, still not quite sure. But we will just take a couple of minutes. We've got 2 minutes break so we can get sorted and just test our mics with the students themselves. So go and grab a tea or a coffee quickly or go and do a toilet break, and we'll see you back online at 9:50 very soon. Thank you so much, everyone. With each other. We've got some guiding questions, which were prompts that Danielle from Nepal's shared with us initially. We'll put the full questions into the chat, but you might also want to spend some time thinking and feeling about what the students have shared with you as well, because I think we have learnt so very much from them today. They've told us that they really respect teachers, but I think today they've been the teachers for us. So thank you to the Nepal students for really stepping up and being our educators today. We'll put the questions into the chat, and then a Zoom pop-up will come up for you to choose which networking room you'd like to prioritise being in. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had some really purposeful discussions and met some really interesting people. I would love to encourage someone in your group to add a few notes from your discussion to the share board. That would be great. There's a QR code on the screen and a link in the chat. It'll help us because we don't have time to be able to do any reporting back and sharing amongst each other, but we'll share all of the notes afterwards, and you'll have a bit of a bank of ideas and strategies as to what people have been discussing they might be able to change or do differently to enable more supportive transitions. We're coming towards the end of our meeting, but we still have one incredible guest speaker. Francine, if you're still on the line, I can't see you yet, but I believe you're going to do an introduction. Francine, can you hear me?
Yeah,
amazing.
I can.
I'll leave it with
thanks.
you.
Amazing, Maddie. Are you all right just to flick to the next screen? So as Maddie mentioned, this is our last segment, but definitely not least, and I'm really super excited to introduce the incredible Refugee Minor Program, or members of the Refugee Minor Program team, Caitlin, Simon and Megan. And I'm really lucky and the staff at River Nile School to work really closely with so many in this team. And we see firsthand the incredible ways that they support not just the transition to schools, but the many different transition moments in young people's lives. So we're really stoked to have the team here presenting today, and I will hand over to the team from the Refugee Minor Program. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that intro, Francine. We do have a slide deck. Here we are. So we have named our slide deck Supporting Refugee Learners into Higher Education. So we'll pop to the next slide. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting from and pay my personal respect to elders past and present. Go to the next one. So yeah, as Francine mentioned, the Refugee Minor Program has been around for quite a while now. We are a very small slice of the refugee landscape. So particularly we work with young people who enter Australia without a biological parent. And these young people are automatically referred to our program from the Department of Home Affairs. We'll go to the next slide. So we have a case management team that really supports young people up until they turn 18. We've got a program called SFRI, or Stronger Futures for Refugee Youth, that provides episodic and voluntary support from 18 up until young people turn 22. And then we have our education and training advisors that support young people's education journey right from arrival all the way up until their tertiary option. So that does put us in a very unique position because we're able to, and really privileged to be part of those major educational transitions for young people. What that also means is that we do take a very long-term view on the support that we provide, really acknowledging that, for young people to get into higher education, it's really, the skills, confidence, access to their education at each stage. So really the language school, secondary school, and beyond. So we the education and training advisors have been a part of the Refugee Minor Program for 8 years now, and really focused on the academic progress of the young people, which is also quite unique. And they're all teacher that have teaching qualifications. I've just included one of the tools that the education and training advisors use, and it's a educational profile that is really about being really clear with all parties about, what the a little bit of information about the young person, what's their learning environment, what are their challenges, but also what their strengths are. So we'll go to the next slide. The other aspect of our program that's a little bit unique is this advantage thinking framework. So this is something that we implemented probably about 3 years ago. And I've included a link for anyone that's wanting to know more about advantage thinking. It's a framework that's being slowly adopted across different youth agencies, but really it really shifts the focus on what the deficits are for young people to what their strengths are, and really helps promote dreams, goals, aspirations. The other feature of advantage thinking is it really puts the onus on service providers to provide opportunities for young people. And so for RMP, that's meant being really purposeful in our stakeholder relationships and the experiences and opportunities that we can offer young people. So, we have a great stakeholder relationship with Victoria University, for example, and at the last school holidays, we ran one of our VCE and VM workshops there. And so, yeah, we find that, that has many different benefits, but one of the main benefits is just getting our young people used to what those institutions look like, soft launching it, so to speak, and just increasing that confidence. The other thing about advantage thinking is that it uses a coaching approach with young people. And what that means for us is that it really helps us to identify where the young people are at in their confidence and coach them through those transitions and those challenging times. So we sort of have that approach, working with young people, but on the other side, we also acknowledge the systemic barriers that our young people face, and we work to support young people to overcome those barriers. And as a result, we get result of probably advantage thinking, our case management support, our SFRI program, and our ETAs. Every year we have, 90 to 95, even sometimes more % of our young people who complete year 12. And a big proportion of those will go into tertiary education. And I'll hand over to Caitlin now, one of our ETAs, to talk about our results from last year. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Caitlin. So I'm the Education Training Advisor for the Northwest region. So before we get into a bit of a case study, we thought we'd go over some of our outcomes. So this is for our 2025 cohort. So last year we had 22 young people graduate from Year 12 VCE or VM, and 50% of them accepted offers to study at a university level across like a really wide range of degrees as well, which is always really nice to see. Then we then had 8 who accepted offers to study at TAFE, and then 3 who entered into the workforce and trades. We also had 4 other young people who weren't year 12, who were like non-year 12 completers, I would say, and 2 of those accepted offers to study at TAFE. 1 opted to complete their VCE at TAFE because they felt that that was a better environment for them, and 1 began studying at TAFE and then wanted to go back to school. So we supported him and he's now studying year 12. This year. So even those who didn't finish year 12 are still really connected to their tertiary pathway in some way. And so now I'll hand over to Simon to start our case study.
Thanks, Caitlin. So yeah, I'm Simon. I'm the Southeast Education and Training Advisor. To show you a bit of what we do, we thought we'd take you through a case study of one of the young people that we work with, who's been de-identified. So her name is Aaliyah. She's been with the RMP since arriving in Australia at the age of 15 with her elderly grandmother. And in early meetings with the RMP, she presented very shy and struggled to engage with the RMP workers. But now she is studying a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering at RMIT, and she lives independently with some of her friends. You can just go to the next slide. So as Danielle's obviously explained the language school and the transitions that they're involved in, we're going to focus the step from there. So as Aaliyah approached the end of her language school time, the options around her schooling were discussed, and fortunately she had us to support her in this stage. And it was determined that based on her needs and her aspirations, the zone school, it was an unsuitable fit for her. And the family noted that. So the RMP supported the family to look at other options and engage with the nearby schools, including participating in a variety of tours and just general discussions about the options that they had. The family decided on an independent school that was close to their home to enroll Aaliyah, and the RMP supported them through these steps, engaging with the school, obviously, and being involved in the enrollment meetings. And during that enrollment meeting, as has been discussed, age is often a challenge when you're going to the initial enrollment. And due to her age, she would normally be placed in year 10, which would set her on a very short path into the senior studies, which we didn't think was a great idea. So we advocated with the school to enroll her in year 9 so that she had opportunity to settle into school. She had opportunity to build her language capacity, and then she was going to have a better opportunity for success in those senior years. Unfortunately, the school was very supportive, and they allowed her to take that year 9 enrollment and also supported her with her initial few weeks at school. So because a common challenge just in schools in general, whether you're from a refugee background or not, is just communication. And to ensure that there is smooth communication within the schools, we always advocate for student support meetings to be held each term. And depending on the need, they can take a well-being, an academic, or a generalized focus. And depending on that need, again, the different school members will participate along with the family. So within the initial meetings, we ensure that Compass is set up, that the families are receiving notifications, and that they're able to engage with the school. Often the schools do take that upon themselves, and it works very effectively, but sometimes for whatever reason, there is a breakdown in communication. So in this instance, we made sure that Aaliyah and her family were able to engage with the school productively, and then we maintain those SSGs throughout the year. I'll hand on to Caitlin for the senior transition.
Thank you. So we find that transition from like middle school to senior school can be such a big jump and such a key point. And that's for kind of like 2 key reasons. One is that the young people are determining kind of what senior stream they're going to go into, and that has a direct impact on the pathway that they take to whatever their next steps are. And there's also such a big jump in coursework, often from year 10 to 11 as well, going from mainstream to that BCE lens. So we know that Alia had like aspirations to do electrical engineering. So we kind of tried to lay a path for her to get to be able to achieve her VCE. And so a key point of that was like advocating for her to undertake 1 year 11 subject while she was in year 10, so that she can get her head around what VCE is. As we know that in VCE, that there's unit guides and attendance requirements and SACs and the structures are different, so that she's ready for kind of that to be her full load, and also to be able to see exactly what support she might need in VCE and if that traditional VCE pathway is viable. And then for the year, we make sure that we attend all like year 10 to 11 course counselling and course information sessions with Aaliyah, and prior to also meet with her and her grandmother to ensure that they're both informed about what these sessions are. We go through course guides so they understand what all the different streams that will be presented to them in terms of like VCE, VM, VPC, and what that means and what all the different subjects or prerequisites that she also might need for her future pathway. So we attend that session to select her subjects, make sure she's got the right subjects that play to her career goals, but also her strengths. So always thinking about that advantage thinking, and also to ensure that she's not persuaded into maybe another option, which is unfortunately we see that quite a lot. So Ali wanted to do a VCE, so we made sure that that happened, and also just double checking that she is enrolled in EAL English, as unfortunately we also see that lots of young people end up in that main English stream when they are supposed to be entitled to that EAL stream and supports. We also approach the kind of like the VPC stream with real careful consideration. We try and advocate for a VCE or VM because we find that has a clear trajectory towards those tertiary pathways that a lot of our young people have, and unless there's kind of like a specific known learning difficulty or a real understanding of the way that course operates at a school to be able to support our young people, we really think about it carefully before we would ever advise that stream. So always going towards those other two streams that are more straightforward towards those tertiary pathways. And over to you, Simon.
All right, so Aaliyah made it to VCE. Obviously, she made it to year 12 and she's having the best time. No, like most year 12 students, she's stressed and she's struggling. And because of that, she ended up becoming ill, and there was a few weeks that she wasn't able to actually attend school. And during that time, she missed a bunch of SACs. So as a program, we're able to work directly with the young person. And so we're able to really, when a problem arises, we can respond very quickly. So at this stage, we realized that she needed extra support. So we connected her with the school wellbeing staff. We always try to focus on, the wraparound support that already exists within them. And if we need to, we can look at external supports when those internal supports aren't available. So we also supported the family in communicating with the school around these missed SACs and worked out a strategy to put in place. We had a meeting with the school to go through a timeline to get her back on track and support her to continue her pathway and finish VCE with an ATAR. However, because of that stress, the school, which is fair enough, were a bit concerned with Aaliyah's mental health, and they were worried that it was going to deteriorate further. And so they started to advocate and have conversations with Aaliyah about going unscored. And within these conversations, Aaliyah was interested in the idea, more so probably because she didn't quite understand the impact that it might have on her pathway. So we had a discussion with Aaliyah, we explored her feelings of stress and the motivations for considering going unscored. And it became very clear that it was less the current stress that she was feeling and more a fear that because she was struggling at the present, that she was going to end up with a lower ATAR score than the goal that she had. So as a team, we decided, obviously along with Aaliyah, that she would continue scored, but she would tell her friends that she was going unscored and would keep her score to herself and anyone that she felt comfortable sharing it with. So it removed that fear that she was going to, have to tell people that she didn't achieve the goal that she set for herself. So that alleviated the stress that she was having, and it allowed her to push on. And obviously within these moments, the communication with the school was pivotal, because if the school might end up having a meeting with the student and then come to an agreement about making a very pivotal decision in their life. And in that situation, when the decision is made, it's very difficult to be unmade. So it's very important that we were, supporting Aaliyah to make the decision that's best for her and best for her overall outlook. And we understand that the young people we work with have been through a lot of challenges, but often within those challenges, they build up resilience and ability to persevere through something like school. you know, in comparison to what they've been through in their lives. Often school, it is stressful, but it's not as stressful as other things they've experienced. And we need to appreciate that they have the capacity like other young people that haven't been like from a non-refugee background. So at the very end of the year, there's a lot of pressure on exams. So to help alleviate the fear, we support in building skills as a program. So we create some and facilitate some workshops during the school holidays to help build exam study habits and also strategies about actually completing the exams, specifically focusing on that English exam, just giving them extra resources, previous papers, and also just the confidence to go into those exams feeling ready and focused. And I'll hand over to Caitlin.
Yeah, so I worked with Alia to make sure that she had a really clear understanding of like what VTAC sees and ATAR are, lots of acronyms at VCE level. And we sit down alongside her to create her VTAC account, to put in her preferences, to write her C's letter, and submit those scholarship applications because alongside like learning about the education system, Aaliyah is also still building her like digital literacy and confidence in navigating online systems. And at a university level, when applying for university, they're really difficult. You've got to navigate the university one, you've got to navigate VTAC. And so we just sit down with her to make sure that like all the right boxes are ticked and that she understands, which is putting in lots of personal information, particularly for her C's letter. So make sure she understands where that information is going and what it's for. We sit down and write her C's letter with her so that she also has ownership over the content of that letter. When Alia received her ATAR, she was unfortunately disappointed with her ATAR, which is unfortunately a really common experience. So we also sit down with her to like counsel her through understanding what that score means, to understand the ranking, and to also understand like the greater perspective of her achievement. Again, I like that advantage thinking that her achieving this ATAR is a really huge thing, especially since she entered the system in year 9. And this also carries on to when university offers then come out because Alia didn't receive her an offer in the first round, which she was also really disappointed in and didn't really understand why. So helping her to understand that, but then also navigate when those portals reopen, understanding the change of preferences, understanding alternative options that she could take and the future offer rounds and supplementary offers. And that if she doesn't get those, we can look at things like advanced diplomas or associate degrees and steps towards. Luckily, Alia did receive an offer in a later round. She got an offer that she was really happy with and she chose to accept it. So we also sat down with her to enroll, do the enrollment process because everything is online. So to navigate that enrollment, to navigate HEX, to navigate subject selections, and also understanding HEX and what these big like bill statements mean, because we also know that in that process, if one wrong box is ticked, then a young person can receive a really scary invoice notice that says they owe thousands of dollars. And in the past, that has unfortunately caused people to pull out of their courses because they didn't understand or know what their options were. So we always sit down with our young people, particularly Alia, to go through all those steps, also so that she has ownership over the process moving forward, because she's about to start like navigating a lot of new systems moving into the university space as well. And so I'll hand back over to Megan.
Unmute myself. So we realise we're in a pretty privileged position at the RMP to be able to give young people this kind of individual support. What we hope to put across in our case studies, hopefully, everyone in the room can get a little bit of knowledge about maybe a different area that they are not working in, and just have a think about what they can do in their role to support even future transitions. So our key takeaways are really that mindset. You can achieve success in higher education. You might need to take a longer path, but you can get there. Any opportunities you can give young people to visit universities and TAFEs is certainly beneficial. We also do a lot of things like online meetings, modeling, asking questions, supporting young people, sitting next to them to access those digital systems. If anyone's here has helped a young person, apply to TAFE, there's 3 or 4 different systems that need to work together. And then thinking about your role now, is there a little plan that you can put in place if things do go wrong for the young person? A little bit of a plan of who they can ask for support in different stages of their journey. So that's all from us. I'll hand back over to, Francine or Maddie. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the team. That was really insightful, and I loved the practical takeaways and tools, but also what came through strongly was that advocacy and that strength-based approach. And I know that I'm really grateful that we have young women who are supported by your team, because you do an incredible job. So thank you for sharing, but also for the incredible work you do on a daily basis. And that, sadly for everyone in the room, does bring us to the end of our Term 3 meeting. We just wanted to let everyone know before we finish up today, just to save the date for Term 4. So we will be doing, our Term 4 meeting will be an in-person meeting, and we will be hosting that at Nile School on Thursday, the 22nd of October. We are still finalising the time, but it will be an afternoon slot to allow people to get there from their various roles and environments. So we will send some information about that and get you to save the date in our follow-up email, which we will send in a week or so's time. We'll open up registration soon as well. So we'll keep everyone informed. But really, thank you again to all of our incredible speakers, to the young people, everyone who attended today, and really, really grateful for you all collaborating and making sure that we can create better environments for our young people from refugee backgrounds. So thank you, everyone, and we're really looking forward to touching base with you all and seeing you in Term 4.
Thank you. That was a great meeting, and I loved hearing from all of the children. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good one.
Lovely.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.